Hi everybody, and a big thank you out to McCarthy Insurance Group based here in Cork City. We're very grateful to have them on board as one of our sponsors for the Long Way Back podcast. A big thank you from all the team here at the Long Way Back. Now on to the show. And welcome back to the Long Way Back podcast. I'm Timmy Long, and today I'm joined by Georgie Cooney. Today we have two very special guests in the audience. We have Róisín and Rachel from Blarney Secondary School. We're just going to have a chat around neurodiversity today, Georgie. So do you want to introduce the two ladies a little bit?
Absolutely. So I am lucky enough to work with both these, I nearly said girls, but lovely ladies, teachers, because I found them, or they came to me, I'm not sure which, through the Dyslexia Association of Ireland. So we run workshops across the country. I coordinate the one in Blarney in Cork, and Róisín and Rachel both work in second level.
Okay.
Which was so important to us because what we were trying to do is actually branch out to some of the older learners. And I think you both joined at the same time.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And they're both teachers in Blarney Secondary School, which is really helpful because the workshops are held there. So it makes it
What
very
do you teach?
I teach English and history.
And Rachel?
I teach English and religion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So even because like you're in the classrooms and you know, like working with Georgie and the Association of Dyslexia Ireland, isn't it?
Yeah,
Did I get that right?
Dyslexia Association
Probably
of
my
Ireland.
first time getting it right. Like you can absolutely notice when there's something going on for someone in the classroom. Would that be right? Like if there's if you can see maybe a learning difference or something else with a child that's probably not after being recognised already.
I think I can notice it in writing and spelling. So like, do you know when you're first getting to know a class, it's all verbal. Like you're talking a lot in class, you're getting to know them. And you might have someone who's really strong verbally and then you open up their copy and you're like, the difference between how they speak and how they write. That's how I first noticed it anyways. It's
What
the
about you,
writing.
Rachel?
I'm the same, really. Yeah. And it's amazing. Like students that would have like learning difficulties would be so strong orally, and they'd be quite confident when it's come to speaking. And then obviously when you're writing, you get to see the areas that they find quite challenging, really.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how a child can go so far without getting assessed, Georgie?
Incredible.
Yeah.
Oh,
But it's so easy for kids not to be recognised because a lot of them have amazing coping strategies, particularly the ones who are into talking and discussing, and they find their own strategies to cope, and then they might hit a brick wall. But you also get the reluctant readers, and I'm presuming you get some in second level class. They just do not want to read out loud.
yeah.
Massively, yeah.
And they usually come to you before class, I would find. Like they'd be like, I don't want to read out. And then that's the first alarm bell.
And that's so true. Do you get any access to kind of education psychology reports before you meet the pupils? And do you see, I find when I'm reading them that often the report does not actually describe the child that you're going to have with you or the student. And in fact, sometimes I'm quite shocked actually how able they are compared to how the report looks, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely true, I think. And like, I suppose from our experience, like you have to get to know every child really. And like, that's kind of how you build your knowledge on them really.
Yeah, because like usually when we get a new class, we'd get if there's any psychological report, and then you get a medical report as well. And like sometimes the kids who like are really flagged, you'd be so nervous to meet them, but then you meet them, they're totally, and it's like it's not a stigma, but you kind of be like, yeah, I have to take care of this person. But then when you actually get to see them, they're so able, and it's just small little things that you've noticed then throughout the year.
Do you know, is there a difference between a girl who has maybe dyslexia and a boy who is dyslexic? Or any of the other learning differences, or maybe ADHD? Can you notice the difference between either?
We were actually talking about this earlier, and we were looking at how like the ratio is like in dyslexia, it's like 5 boys to 3.5 girls, and we were saying, is that because girls are told to like be better and like to be an overachiever? And we were saying, do they mask?
Yeah, because I know like I'm an autism coordinator as well in Blarney, and like when we were doing our course last year in Mary I was the same. Like girls tend to mask a lot more, and I'd say it's just in every area. Like I I
Do you think
compared
that
to
starts
boys.
from maybe when they're young, Rachel? Because
Yeah.
for girls, right, it's cool for a boy to be disruptive. Let's say in a classroom, you know, girls wouldn't be as disruptive of boys in the classroom because it's not. Is it not the thing? You know, ours is like. Well, I remember growing up in school, like I was in. We would call it the slow class, right? But that was just the way
Yeah.
other teachers.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was just how it was. We're
Yeah.
talking about the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah.
It's different today.
Yeah.
And listen, there's no judgment to anybody from back then about anything.
Yeah.
But there was about 14 of us in the classroom. There was 13 boys and 1 girl.
Yeah.
You know, the ratio to that was
Yeah.
completely different. And I can't really remember seeing any girls back then being disruptive like the boys in the
Yeah.
classroom, because we were all looking for attention, all running around the place trying to make attention ourselves and
Yeah.
being disruptive then, so we didn't we didn't have to read or spell something on the board. Or the last thing I
Yeah.
wanted was the teacher's attention coming on me
Yeah.
and to ask me to do something.
Yeah.
Would it be the same with girls? Do you see the head down when it's there up, like when you're going around the class to ask all the students something? Do you see the head going down? Because that was me. My head was buried in my lap like that.
Definitely, and the girls are. I don't want to be generalizing girls,
generalising,
but
yeah.
they're very forthcoming, and like girls want to show you what they know. Like I went to an all girls secondary school myself, and like there was such like competition to do good, and like. I don't know, like it was just such a thing. It was like cool to be doing well, which sounds kind of strange.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
I think, I just think with teenagers in general, no one wants to stand out, especially in a classroom. Like everyone just wants to obviously just get on with the class and not be drawn attention to something like that. And like that might be an area of like they do that on purpose to avoid that. Like, oh, if I'm getting in trouble for being bold, I'm not getting in trouble for not being able to read out this paragraph.
Yeah.
That might be an area that's might be their coping mechanism with it.
And maybe they're disruptive because they want to draw attention to other sides of themselves
Yeah.
rather than what their
Yeah.
writing is like.
Yeah.
And that's a great point, because
Yeah.
when I was being disruptive, Georgie, I was being disruptive because the other kids in this class were saying, "Look at your man, he's mad."
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But the teacher, I was driving the teacher crazy. But it was more important to me to drive the teacher crazy than to
Yeah.
all the kids to go to the schoolyard afterwards and say, you
Yeah.
can't read,
Yeah.
you know. And that's how it was.
And would they have done that? Would they have?
Like I would have got a slagging over
Yeah.
my capability, because I literally struggled massively, and I hated school with a passion. And I spent the majority of my time writing lines in the assembly or at the back of the class. Now I had very understanding teachers, okay, the best of their ability, and I was completely dysregulated as a child,
Yeah.
with the stuff that was going on at home,
Yeah.
and the learning stuff that was going on for me with the dyslexia and the ADHD. And when I was asked to do something, like I hit an anxiety that it overwhelmed me. I used to pray that the teacher wouldn't ask me to read Anne and Barry. That's how tough it was.
Yeah.
But like, because of the lack of understanding around education back then, for me, like my mother didn't understand why I wasn't able to do my homework at home. You know, nobody understood. Like and from that stemmed this belief, because it was in school and I know I wasn't able to cope with any of the subjects, and then at home I was getting it because I wasn't able to do the homework.
Yeah.
It was like, fucking hell, I must actually be
From every angle.
I must actually be slow.
Yeah,
I must
it's
be
awful.
thick. I must be stupid. And that was
That has such
how
an
I
effect
went.
on you.
Yeah.
I went through the whole education system like that until I came into a position in secondary school, because in primary school the teacher, like, they'll go looking for you because they know we were wild, or else they'd make send someone off to the house to check. And when they find out then that you're supposed to be in school and you're actually on the hop, when you go home you're going to be a sorry boy, trust me.
Oh, yeah.
But then when we went into secondary, it was so big,
Yeah. You could
nobody really kind of noticed you were missing So we could do what we wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I know times are different.
I was
together.
just going to say, like, thank God times are different now, because like kids are flagged if they have been assessed straight away, and like resources set up, and like that whole like term, like that the slower class, we never use that.
No,
Ever now, which is so good, because like slow is such a
awful.
derogatory word when you look at it in that.
And
sense.
that's actually a good point, because what sort of training did you two have before becoming classroom teachers? I don't know if you went to the same training college or what courses or what have you, but were you actually taught about the language that you could use with, you know, a group of children who have learning differences? Were you taught anything about learning differences or how to teach them? And what I'd be so interested to hear what the situation
Do you want to
was.
go for it? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind. Well, I went to UCC and I loved it, and we totally were taught about it. We had a module every semester. So like it started off with like the psychology, and the psychology behind education, like why we do certain things, and then it went into diversity and inclusion, and we had to do a full assignment on that, and it was worth like 5 credits. And we looked, like, our lecturer was brilliant. We had like a lecture on different learning abilities that could come before you, so like dyslexia, autism, and all the rest. And we actually looked, then we had to like take one of our classes that we differentiated a lot in. So like, what was the class group that you had to bring in everything that you had in your, like in your, what's the word I'm looking for? In your box of tricks. And we had to like do a study on that class then, and like what worked, what methodologies didn't work, and we had to like pick students. Obviously we'd say student X, student A. You wouldn't use names, so we were really well trained.
This is really good to hear, because I don't hear that very, very often.
No, it was great. And then in our lesson plans, we always had to have a section on differentiation. So like, what did you do in this class to differentiate for all different types of learners? It was so we were really taught, but then again, like, it's all grand on paper. When you get into the classroom, it's totally different.
This is the other thing.
But like you are given the tools. Well, I was anyways in UCC.
Roisin, what about you?
I went to St. Pat's, so DCU, and I think to be honest, I can't really remember, but I know that in the lesson plans I used differentiation, and that was big. But I know from my experience how I learned about learning difficulties was when I was on placement and I was in a classroom. Like, I'll never forget
actually doing the teaching.
Yes, I'll never forget my second year placement when I had a student with ADHD for the first time encountered, and I was like, this child will not sit down. Like, I just couldn't understand how I could try and cater for his needs, but you learn, like, you adapt, and those types of experiences will actually, like, they're the things that will, you know, you learn and you remember.
You often learn the hard way. I mean, I graduated probably years before you guys, but I remember coming in, I had a classroom of 35, it was inner city London, and I had absolutely no idea what to do. And there were at least 10 kids who in this 35, classroom of 35, and I did so many things that were wrong. And I worry if it was detrimental to their education. You know, you just think about it. If only I had known and been more prepared to how I could have helped, you know. And now, you know, I've sent myself off and I retrained. And of course, you were saying you're the coordinator of the autism unit in Blarney.
Yeah,
so you must have had further training for that.
Yeah, so I did a course last year in Mary I, certificate in autism studies. So me and 2 other coordinators in the school. So that was really, really beneficial, because a lot of autistic or children with autism have co-occurring learning difficulties. So they have dyspraxia, they have ADHD. So it was really beneficial to understand from their perspective as well. And I think I was saying to you as well, like, in general, multisensory learning seems to be the way forward, like with just appealing to their senses, because obviously writing, reading, that is an area that they find challenging. So when you're appealing to their auditory, when you're appealing to visual, like, that's when you're going to get their attention. That's when they're going to learn. So
there are different ways to teach around that stuff, and I suppose we are definitely on a path to being able to teach every child individually to whatever meets their needs. But are we going fast enough? That's the question. Like, we do know what kids need today, because there's no one set way now to teach kids anymore. And we know it, particularly when you have a class of maybe 10 or 15 or 20 at these days, and you might have maybe 6, 7, 8, I'd say, just ones with reports, and you might have another few without reports because it was never done, you know. And it's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
It is a big deal, and I always say this, and I think it's important to say it. The ones that don't get it, that don't get the attention that they need in relation to educate them to their ability, they do slip in between the cracks if the school hasn't got the staff to help them or the knowledge, you know, around what's good for the child. And no, some schools have it cracked, haven't they? They have all these different units.
Well, it's often from the leadership. If the leadership understands the importance of, you know, neurodiversity, learning difference in the classroom, they will often encourage the professionalism in the teachers, for them to go on courses. They realise they need to spend money on resources, and to keep the conversation going. That's really, really important, that we don't just do a course, put it in a box, put it on the shelf. We actually talk about it the whole time, you know, and I mean, there is a vast difference between those schools that have leadership that ignore it and someone else's problem, and those that have leadership and really embrace it.
And what's the difference to the schools that embrace it and the ones that don't? Like, what is it? Is there a staff shortage, or is it just completely
I tell you, the
ignorance?
thing I notice is the parent complaints. So the ones that come to me and say, you cannot believe what the school have just said, done, written, how my child is treated, what resources they're not getting. It is, you know, it's really evident. And then you've got the other ones who never talk like that. They're always, and you can see it in the children. I have a child who comes to me on a Wednesday, and he tells me about all these amazing learning breaks he gets, and he goes into the sensory room when he's feeling stressed, and he tells me about how his teachers just taught him this new word, and he's remembered it and told me. And it's just like the school's just got it right. You know, and it's very multisensory. But it's also, I know there are parents as well who go, well, what about the kids who really love studying, love academia, love text, love, you know, multisensory teaching will also reach them because everyone has a sense for learning, and some use lots of different senses. We can tap into at least one sense, they will learn. And that's really, really important. So people shouldn't hush about multisensory learning.
And this form of learning is coming.
It
so
is.
we have to get we have to integrate it back into. We have to integrate it, and I'm sure it's happening in Blarney.
To be honest, I'd say a lot of teachers are implementing it naturally in their classrooms. Like a lot of teachers differentiate naturally, anyways.
Could you just actually just tell us, like, what sort of things do we see in the classroom? Because I obviously go in there and I'm amazed by the technology. You guys have like Apple TV, interactive whiteboards.
We're very lucky in Blarney, to be fair. We're very up with the technology anyway. So
and like
lots of
when you were saying that some schools, you know, I would say all schools around the country are getting into it, but Blarney is actually amazing. It's so student centred. But sorry,
what was the question?
Sorry, you're talking about Apple TVs and like digital.
Sorry. I actually forgot where it was going.
Well, we were just asking about like how the multisensory has been introduced in the classroom.
Yes. I suppose
maybe an example.
Yeah, I suppose through visuals, really, isn't it? Is a massive one. Like using multimedia, like using short films to examine, let's say, a poem. Like you can watch, like I know, personally, anyways, with students with dyslexia, for example, like I often play the video of the poem for them first, and they can listen to it first before reading it. Like that might be one way of doing it. I know you probably have those as well.
No, I'm the exact same, especially for poems, because poetry is complicated
Yeah.
for people
It's
in
very
general.
complicated.
I didn't like poetry for years, but like, and there's some poetry, it just sounds weird in your head, and it doesn't sound like it's how it's supposed to. But if you play, like I always play The Lake I Live In Is Free by Yeats, him reading it first, and he kind of reads it like it's a song, and then it gets into their head that, okay, this is a poem, it rhymes, it has a beat, and then there are two poetic techniques that you have right there, like rhyming and rhythm. And then as well, I think that the junior cycle has totally incorporated multisensory, because now even just for English, they have to study film. There's actually like learning outcomes that like students have to do multi-modal texts. So that is listening, it's hearing, it's, you know.
Yeah, they even learn about cinematography. And wide angle lenses and heaven knows what.
And like for visual learners, like especially with people with dyslexia, that's amazing. And then like even for senior cycle, like for Shakespeare, instead of just like reading it, we actually show them clips and like of actors maybe that they'd know. So like that's for visual. For history then, because I'm a history teacher as well, like showing them clips for movies. They love that. So like we're doing the Romans, we show them Gladiator. And like that really sticks with boys in general. And they're always like, when are we going to finish Gladiator? And I'm like, oh, well, I was just showing you that clip.
But it also makes it interesting as well.
Yeah.
It
Exactly.
makes it so interesting.
Totally.
And then as well, like the Department of Education are all now for like cross-curricular. So like we should be bringing in like numeracy and numbers into history and English. And it might sound weird, but it actually works. And like even as teachers, when we're having department meetings, even if it's like a CSB teacher and a geography teacher, we're like, oh, we did that. We could touch on that together. So all of the subjects are trying to link together. So it makes sense in the students' minds.
See, history is a really interesting one with certainly with dyslexic learners I've worked with at second level. How picturing that change in time, like the fact that BC was before AC, and I find that if you show them a line and show them when things started, like even with the Romans, like how it sort of started before BC and crossed over into, and they see it and then they can picture certain events in a linear way, whereas before that it's all over the shop. They don't know who came first, where or when. And it
makes it.
And sort of learning the key, if they learn some key dates and have a picture that goes with that key date, stick it on this timeline. The timeline can go all the way around the house if you want it to.
Yeah, and that's how I teach history. Like there's so much text in it. So and if I have kids that are freaking out, like I can't learn all this, I'm like, all you need to know for every chapter is what caused this, what was the course of the event, and what happened after. So like the causes, course, consequences, the 3 C's. And like that's visual for them then. And like they could divide every chapter up into 3 columns. And it's not just this big chapter in a book.
Oh, I wish I had you
know,
as my history teacher.
No, but like
you might give me some tutorials as well with my course, my master's then.
No, but Róisín's made sure you always do visual. Like whenever I'm saying, oh, what are you doing for the workshop tonight? You're like, oh, I'm showing them this, then we're doing this. You're amazing at that as well.
Róisín, I mean, the other day I walked past, I said, what are you guys? She's like, oh, we're doing a podcast.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Really?
Yeah.
So basically it's like, in fairness, as you were saying, like the junior cycle has been like obviously changed, and it's much more accessible for students and promote multisensory learning. So instead of writing it, I got them to create it first and to actually make a podcast. So they had their introduction, they had their theme tune, they brought in a guest, they had a competition, they had a sponsorship, and they recorded it and they great crack doing it. And afterwards they had to write it. So at least they've done it already. So they have a base then, and then going into it. And I did that in my mainstream class as well, and they enjoyed it. So. And
there's a bit of crack in that as well, especially if they're working with a group of them.
Yeah.
If there's a group, when somebody's working on their own like that, they can get a little bit shy. But when there's a group, there's a bit of camaraderie, and they're all finding what their strengths as well.
Of course.
They'll find their strengths. What this guy might be, he might be strong at talking. This guy might be great at the research side of it. The other guy might be great at the cameras and the production, like Tony. So everybody will find it. It's a great way as well of showing people what they're good at as well.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And in fact, in the workshops, did you see a change? Actually, we were talking about it earlier today, but have you seen a change in any of the kids when they first come in? And say today, so today was the last day. Yeah. And I know that some of you, like some of Rachel's, won't be coming back because they've gone into second level, and a lot, second level is a bit of a difficult one because there's so many after school activities. And just what could you just mention a few changes that you've seen with your pupils, your students? Sorry, I always say pupils because I was primary trained. Anything that stands out in your head of what you think came out because they were in a group with other dyslexic kids and they felt comfortable in that group? What would you say?
For me, it's the reading. When I first meet any of them, they say, I'm not reading out loud. And I'm like, okay, fine. Like, I'll read it. And I know that they'll have to in time, but you don't want to freak them out at the start. But I've had one girl now for 3 years. She wouldn't have read in the first probably year and a half. And now, like 3 years on, if I'm like, who wants to read the next line? Her hands up straight away. And I'm not saying that's like, it's just because she's in that supportive environment. She probably saw that not everyone there was a word perfect reader, and she was like, like we were saying how supportive the workshops are. Like they all support each other. Because they're all like, we all have dyslexia, and it's not a stigma or like something that's negative in their head. They're like, oh, these are my people.
And to be fair, like that's one of the first things we do. We talk about it, like we just put it out there. you're dyslexic. What do you find tough about it? Like, what's your challenges? And they all write down things, and then we go through it afterwards, and they're like, oh yeah, I find that tough too. That's quite hard.
Yeah.
So like, it's a good way to like make an open conversation and be like, right, how can we help you more? How can we alleviate this challenge for you? And I suppose in secondary as well, they all have similar challenges, really.
Hi everybody, and a big thank you out to McCarthy Insurance Group based here in Cork City. We're very grateful to have them on board as one of our sponsors for the Long Way Back podcast. A big thank you from all the team here at the Long Way Back. Now on to the show.
Do you know what it's reminding me of? It's reminding me of an AA meeting or an AA meeting.
I have it written down here that it's
yeah.
like a therapy group.
Yeah.
But it is.
Because when you walk in there for the first time, you think you're so different, everybody unique.
Yeah.
And when this guy then in front of you is telling his story, you're saying, looking around the room saying, fuck, who told him?
Yeah.
Who told him my story, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
And there was something you mentioned there about the kids reading.
Yeah.
I remember in AA, like at the beginning of any meeting, we always talk through the book. There's a section of the book to read. And the sweat used to be dripping down my back, and one day I just said, you know what, listen, I'm going to just face it. So I started to read, and the big book now is a really difficult book to read because it's coming from the 40s and the wording is very strong.
Yeah.
And I picked up the book and I read it, and it was word for word, and some of the words I couldn't pronounce. It was my first time doing it. And I kept doing a small bit because I know I wasn't being judged in this room because everybody else was there for the same reason as me. And no, I wouldn't say I'm the best reader, but I do read. But if I come across a word that's difficult, then I might get a little nudge of anxiety and kind of look who's in the room list, It's bringing me back to my childhood.
Yeah.
So, and how I used to feel when I was in the classroom. But what it is, it's great that kids can talk about the way they learn, the stuff that they struggle with. And I think that's fantastic, bringing something like that into the classroom.
I think just in general though, like one of the main things that we, like, is our goal, I suppose, is their confidence. Like we see it that there's such a lack of confidence in them. And it's so sad to see because like some of them excel in other areas. Like even one of the students, she was talking about how she made the Cork team, under 14 camogie. But like, it's just like they have so many strengths. It's such a pity to see their confidence lacking in the classroom. But with these types of like, workshops, they have the opportunity to build that confidence, which is great. And 100%. I found that in mine anyway.
Like I bet you the girls on her team never probably knew that she was like, not confident at school because she's so confident on the pitch. But like it's that anxiety of like being pounced upon. And we were like looking at strategies earlier, like what's good for dyslexic students and not. And like you should always kind of give them a heads up if you're going to ask them to read. Like it's not beneficial at all for them to be like, you didn't have your hand up but I'm going to ask you anyways. Like that's one thing, like you need to give them time because it's really hard as a child to be learning something new and to process it and then have an adult be asking. So like,
especially when they've already been conditioned into the way they're thinking. No, and I think one of the best ways as well to be able to help somebody to move away from that is bring up some of the dyslexic thinkers. Like you've Einstein, you've some of the most famous and powerful people in the world financially. A lot of them, Richard Branson is dyslexic, he's ADHD, all these different people. Edison, like he was just like when you say, right, this is what this guy done in his time here. And there's facts as well that some of the most influential entrepreneurs that we have around us are either dyslexic or they have ADHD, because what it is because we don't learn like everybody else. We have to work a lot harder.
Yes,
and you think outside the box because you have to.
They work 5 times harder.
I love like in my work in construction. I can solve problems with my head. Like if we come across an issue with something in a room, my mind will it won't be set on the problem, it'll be set on the solution. And that's a great way to be.
And I can't do that. I can't visualize. We were trying to put up a tent, don't ask. And I could not visualize what it would look like. And it was so hard. I found it so hard. We didn't have any instructions. We didn't know what it was meant to look like. And it took 4.5 hours. It wasn't just a little tent. It was like a marquee thing. But I know that I think that's such a gift to be able to just visualize something and go, I can see that goes there.
Yeah.
And dyslexic learners are visual learners. Like when you were saying there about like what kind of things you bring into the classroom, like making words look like what they mean is a huge thing. Like we were looking at
Memory hooks.
Memory hooks.
Yeah.
Like that's so good for dyslexic learners. We were thinking like the 3 theirs, like there, and there. They're like, well, they all sound the same phonetically, so what's the difference? So like the THEIR, you change the I into a man. So it means like there, it's their possession. Or like then THERE, you draw the or into an arrow to go like we're going over there. And it's like small things like that, but like that makes, like that's very creative. I can't do that. Like they know, like their resource teachers have been teaching them. So that like paves the way into the future too, because they can look at a word and see it completely different. And then same with problems at
the
work.
benefits
and
of resource
the benefits.
teaching.
Resource teaching is amazing.
But not all kids get resource teaching. That's the problem. But it's great that it's happening, and it just shows. It just shows the positive effects when a child's needs are being addressed. In a.
Are we moving in the right direction in relation to some of the issues that we definitely are in some schools? We are definitely. But like in some schools, even the charity that myself and Georgie started last year, Educate All Minds, and Paul, like that charity is there to help children that will never get an assessment. Yeah. And what it does is that assessment changes someone's thinking. And it also changes the way they're taught if the school has the resources to be able to help them.
Yeah.
But if they haven't got the resources, the report will just go into a file in the cupboard and it's no dig at the school. Yeah. Because some schools are struggling financially and with resources and staff. And we're very, very well aware of that. Where my thinking is, and this is always long term for me, we need to have a system in this country where every child, no matter what their financial circumstances, are given assessment. If the teachers are the people that are working with them in the school believe that they need an assessment. There should be some form of screening first that can be done either online or with somebody that works in the school that's trained to do it. And then there should be an educational psychologist or whatever else is needed be brought in and given to a child. And after that, then that child will get an education that works with them. That's already have to be researched and known to work for a child with these different learning differences and additional needs.
Yeah.
But I think what's also important to add to that is that too many people are waiting, and I've heard this so many times, waiting for the report to happen until they do something. Oh, well, when they get the assessment, we'll then look at resources. If a child is struggling in literacy, whether they have a report or not, they should be getting some form of additional support. Multisensory teaching in the classroom, and teachers need, if you've got a child in the classroom who you don't know what to do with them, we need the leadership to encourage them to learn, go out on a course, keep learning. It's this just, we'll just wait for the report. And then 5 years have gone past and there's been no support. So that's really important as well, that it's not just within that period of time, things are still happening. And that, and I just find try not to be negative. Sorry, I should be more positive.
No, but that charity sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Like that will.
That's unreal.
Well, we're in the process.
We're in the process.
Yeah.
Just waiting. We're waiting for confirmation.
Well, I think it is moving in the right direction. Like I just think, and not being like, oh, it's all rainbow. Like I'm sure there is, like there's so many kids, but I think even like with well-being, like first years now and all the way into like senior cycle, there are designated hours now to children's well-being, and that was never there before, really. So like, and that's not academic. Like that could be like their physical well-being, their mental well-being. They do meditation, like SPHE. It's actually amazing. So like,
and all these things make their school days easier, really, for them. Like they manage their emotions a lot easier and stuff like that, because it is tough being a teenager, having all that pressure on you, and then to learn like every single day. So
and if you are not getting maybe the supports right now that you need, at least you do have those breaks throughout the week where it's not all academic like pressure as well. You get to know your classmates, you get to know yourself and learn new skills. So I do think like going back to your question, is it moving in the right direction? I think like totally.
It's brilliant to hear.
Definitely, and I would like to see it starting even earlier in primary school, which is obvious. You know, where there's more around regulation for children, helping them to deregulate when they get upset, and just teach them how to be able to understand emotions a little bit better. And again, through screens, just showing them, oh, this child is feeling sad. You look, this is what's going on for them. You know, and they can relate then to how that child is feeling with themselves. And that's how we're going to teach kids, is in that visual way. Because emotions is so abstract with a child. It's not something that they can, you can talk to a child about emotions unless they're really tuned in and they've understood from a young age how they feel.
Like it must be very hard for a child to express how they're feeling anxiety. They probably don't even know what that word is.
Like,
you know,
I didn't know what it was until I was 33.
You actually have to teach them. You have to teach them what these emotions are.
Like even
I really didn't. I hadn't a clue. I lived my life in anxiety.
Why would you know?
I just did not know what it was. I lived and I've said this on numerous occasions. I know happy and sad. Happy when I was stoned and sad when I wasn't. You know, and everything in between then was. I had no clue of, you know. So when I did start realising what anxiety was, I said, fucking hell. People were saying to me, Jess, I feel very anxious. And I'd say, what's that? And they'd say, I feel like this. And I'd say, jeez, I feel like that all my life, but I don't judge it. You know? And I said, and I just couldn't understand it. But you see, my nervous system was dysregulated from a young age because of my own stuff going on for me as a young child. And I didn't understand that. And I don't believe everybody felt like that. Everybody, I didn't realise that everybody has such a different upbringing. Some kids are brought up in loving, caring environments and they get everything that they need for to nourish them emotionally and love and there's no poverty. Some kids don't. Some kids haven't got that. And sometimes they're left to their own devices when stuff goes on from. And what happens when you don't know how to regulate yourself or process is pushed. And what happens then eventually is you disconnect and you become completely up here. You live your life in your head. You know, because up down from here down. And that's what we don't want to happen. That's how we eventually cut down the numbers in our prisons. We cut down the numbers of people homeless in the streets. Cut down the numbers of people trying to commit suicide around us. That's how we stop all this. We don't, like the interventions that we have at the moment with youth clubs and all the other organisations and groups that do so much fantastic work are perfect. They're great. But I think there should be a lot more energy, time and financial support put into all these things for kids young. Like when a child is young, you should be you should be teaching a child when they're young how to live, how to feel, teaching them what it's like to be a human being. You know, how to sit with themselves. You know, and when they're ready, then bring them into the education side of it. I think we need more people that understand the emotional well-being of a child in primary schools than we actually need teachers. And that's just my opinion. I'll get probably slaughtered over that. But okay, and that's okay. But that's my own opinion based on my own upbringing in school. We need kids to be, some kids will be great, but some kids won't. Some kids will be coming from an environment that's really, really tough. You know, so that's just my opinion in it. I do think we need to start working a little bit more in the primary area. It's just not happening at the moment because the resources aren't there.
Like we're in secondary, but sometimes I think about that. Like if I know a kid is struggling and I'm there teaching them about like metaphors, I'm like, they don't care. They have bigger fish to fry than this metaphor and this poem. And like sometimes that does dawn on me. You know, when I'm teaching, I'm like, oh God, like being teenagers. But like being a teenager is so hard.
We'll give you a memory hook after.
We'll teach you that.
But I think as well, like with autistic children, like behavior is communication. So when they get upset or dysregulated, like they're trying to tell you something. And I think that's what a lot of children.
Oh yeah.
When they go quiet,
it goes back to this. We talked about this in the first podcast. It's, you know, so much of this kind of challenging behavior, or within a diagnosis of ADHD, for example, is anxiety and dysregulation. And as you've just said, when there is this sort of what people might consider bad behavior or disruptive behavior, what is it that caused it? What is the trigger? And with autism, we know that it could be a multitude of things. It could be the windows open.
Yeah, it could be sensory related.
Could be
There's
so
many
much.
factors. Yeah. But like even with every child that's in front of you, like you get to know your students, and like when they're having off days or they're not having a great day, and like it's like anyone really, if even like behavior is communication, like and I think as teachers,
finding the triggers and avoiding that if possible. It's not always possible, but it is very possible if we learn about it and look at them and find it.
Yeah, things are definitely changing, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's great to hear all
For
of
the
this
better.
stuff.
Yeah, and it's great to see it. It's great to see so many young teachers around today as well, and there's nothing wrong with the teachers that are near retirement, but it's nice to see a new dynamic coming in. It's where the old dynamic of how things were done is starting to change, and there's more understanding, I think. I have a question. Were any of you taught anything around trauma in college?
In college, yes. I thought you were going to say when I was in school. No, there was nothing when I was in school.
Trauma informed around.
There was.
What actually goes on for some children in the environments that they're living in.
There was, and like we'd always be flagged on children who might be going through trauma as well. So like not to like do anything that would trigger them. But we learned about it in child psychology, and we learned about like what is family and like how that affects a child, and like you were saying like the conditions at home, and we were kind of looking at how sometimes school is an escape for children, and like we have to be really careful when they come through the door. So we learned a lot about trauma, and we were.
That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant to hear. Honestly,
And that sometimes that can help somebody on their own personal journey as well when they start learning about trauma. It brings up stuff from which is fantastic. And with that, then you can maybe relate a little bit more to somebody then within a classroom, because you might have experienced something that's in your own experiences in school quite similar.
Yeah,
Do you
like
know what I mean?
there's so many factors in a classroom environment now, like apart from learning. Do you know what I mean? Like you're just encountering so many different things in children's lives, and learning is only one factor of a teaching environment these days.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Georgie, any questions? We have one more question here.
So much more to learn.
There is so much, but we've the readable.
The Readable project.
Readable project. So what's the Readable project?
The Readable project is basically like an online project for students who might be able to access the workshops, they might be able to attend them, might be in their area. And basically for 8 weeks, we do like, again, multisensory approach to like junior cycle text. So we do a lot of reading, building confidence, analyze text, like just different, basically the same as we do in a classroom, we would in a workshop, but online.
Because there are some counties that don't have a workshop, or they might live right on the other end of the county to where the workshop is. So it's their only way of accessing this kind of learning.
Yeah.
And the workshops you do in Blarney School, is that open to everybody, or is it just Blarney students?
Oh, it's everyone.
Everybody?
Yeah.
Oh, the dyslexia one open. Yes, we have kids from all over Cork. And there's one in Youghal as well, and there's one in Bandon.
And who's that? That's belong to the
Dyslexic Association of Ireland. So they're all run by I think it's 27 workshops.
And how does it work? How does that structure work? Do you know, is it just dyslexia, or is it kids with other learning differences, or what?
So what happens is that a lot of the kids with dyslexia, I mean, what we find now is that there's this co-occurring or comorbidity, as sometimes people call it. So you might have dyslexia with ADHD, dyslexia with dyspraxia, dyspraxia with autism, autism with ADHD. There's a lot of they're more complex profiles than just straightforward dyslexia. So I think when they are applying for a place, they have to attach the education psychology report, which in itself is it's not controversial, but it's a shame a report has to exist in order to be able to. But of course, they have to have some way of being able to make it all work, you know. And so you can come along with basically any kind of profile that is in relation to dyslexia, and I can't remember what did you say? This is me rambling on.
I was just asking whether it was just for children with dyslexia, or can kids with other forms that have learning differences go there as well?
Yes, but they have to have a dyslexia diagnosis.
Dyslexia has to be the primary diagnosis.
Yeah.
Okay. And what would you say to a parent, Georgie, if their child does not even want to go to school and struggling with whatever's going on for them around, if they're dyslexic and they might have other additional things going on for them, and they can't even get them out because the child is struggling? How does a parent approach that?
Do you know, it's really difficult because this has happened a couple of times where I've said, look, would they try the workshops? So even if they're refusing to go to school, would they try? But actually getting them out of the house and coming to something so daunting for them I've just not had any success being able to do that.
Yeah.
So they can't even get into the workshop to see what it's like. Whether they like it or not is another thing altogether. So, I mean, this is kind of why we're doing these podcasts as well, is to try and help parents know what else is available, what else is out there, because there are other ways that we can help them. There are play therapists, music therapists, drama therapists, there are groups, there are different types of schools being set up. There's care farms like Castle Martyr Care Farm, all there to support them. So it's not a hopeless situation, but it's sort of looking and finding and not sort of giving up and trying to seek advice from people who might know someone else's neighbour, and trying things out. But
And play farms.
Play farms, yes.
Play farms, which was I think one might be coming to Cork soon.
Oh, the care. Do you know what? There's one in Castlemartin, there's one in West, and there's one possibly developing in North Cork. Yes.
Well, the readable is great for that. The what you're saying there about people who can't go to school and maybe would come to a workshop.
That's
At
a good
least
point.
they could do the readable from their home because they're on a webcam.
Yeah.
And
it's tomorrow's actually our last night of it. But I found their confidence in reading actually massively improved. And I noticed that more on the readable than I did in the workshops. I noticed, I suppose you were doing more writing and stuff like that in the workshops, but even there, it's great just building a rapport with them. And you might think, it might be hard over Zoom, but it actually is fine.
And do you have a mix of girls and boys? Because we're predominantly girls in the physical workshops.
Okay.
Which I've thought about a lot, and I think it is a language thing that girls are more willing to come out and socialise in these sort of group situations. That's this is the conclusion I've come to. Because we are predominantly girls. I mean, your group is a fair mix, but...
Yes, 3 boys.
Yeah.
I can't do maths.
5 girls, 3 boys. So yeah, did you didn't notice that?
No, not I have second years and there's a mix. One of the groups only has 1 boy. There's only 4 in the group in total, and the other has 3 boys and 4 or 5 girls.
Maybe it's more accessible to people who are not as willing to come out and socialise in a physical.
Yeah. And I will just say as well, from my experience dealing with parents, parents are unbelievable to try and help and support their kids. Oh my God, they just want the best for them, naturally enough. But it's amazing. I sent out a couple of emails before I started about, what's their interests and their strengths and everything. And parents are so detailed with what they like and what they don't like and everything. They really want the best for their children. So I will say that from...
And
it's great
a lot
communication.
Of those parents probably have had their own stuff as well, and they can understand the emotional aspect of it, and they can feel how their child may be feeling because their struggles around learning. And that's why they're going that extra edge. Yeah. They mightn't even be diagnosed. Some of them.
Yeah.
But we're watching their child and something might come up for them. But listen, it's been an absolute pleasure, ladies.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming in tonight and having a chat with us and just explaining how it works. Yeah. And it sounds like you have it all sorted.
Great.
we have it under control.
Yeah. But, listen,
Thanks
thank
a million.
you so much. And if anybody can reach them, Georgie, you can reach them through Dyslexia Spell or Dissociation Dyslexia Ireland, is it?
Yes, so Dyslexia Association of Ireland. I'm going to have struck.
I can't even pronounce it.
DAI.
It's too much of a big word.
We'll put the acronym up, I think.
Yeah.
So Dyslexia Association of Ireland.
No
Yes,
acronyms.
anyone
No
who wants
acronyms.
to come to any of the workshops, they can register with them.
Yeah.
And or they could hunt them down and find them. No, I wouldn't encourage that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. So listen, thanks a million.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Another great podcast from the long way back. I'm Timmy, Georgie, Róisín and Rachel. Thanks again and slán.